fiscal year. These statutory obligations, they eat 90% of our revenue. And what only remains, the government bears unavoidable social responsibilities that cannot be deferred. These include the provision of essential medicines, the delivery of accessible and quality education, the supply of affordable farm inputs to support food security, and the allocation of resources to critical national development initiatives. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, furthermore, the fiscus is also constrained by the need to clear arrears accumulated over the past 5 years. The arrears are quite huge, and I'm sure in our presentation we'll highlight that. And this continues to exert pressure on our budget. The situation is compounded by limited resource availability, as previously highlighted. The current reforms. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, besides all these challenges, government is currently implementing a set of reforms anchored on the National Economic Recovery Plan, which is aimed at addressing immediate macroeconomic and social challenges while laying a strong foundation for sustainable and inclusive growth. In support of this, government has already announced and it began implementing a range of revenue enhancing and expenditure control measures during the 2025-2026 mid-year budget. Allow me to add on this issue. You will see the figures. You will see where our expenditures are. You will see where our revenues are. You will see the deficit. If you don't make difficult decisions now, I still repeat, if you don't make difficult decisions now, which will be felt by each and everybody, except the poor people in the village. If you cannot accept to absorb or to swallow the bitter pill, then you should forget having a strong economy. Tough decisions have to be made, and they'll be made, and I will need your support. We are doing that in order to resuscitate this economy. We are doing that so that at the end of the day, we should all smile and we'll be saying, we have done a good job. And that everybody, even the people in the village, should be able to see what we have done. Debt management and restructuring. Considering the high debt levels, government is committed to restoring public debt sustainability and creating fiscal space for critical spending. Accordingly, government intends to reprofile its domestic debt obligations as part of the broader debt management strategy. Ongoing analysis is focused on identifying options that will provide the necessary fiscal relief while safeguarding financial sector stability and supporting the economic growth. I'm aware that people are worried that there will be a haircut. And people didn't know what kind of haircut will it be. But I want to assure you that it will be a good haircut, which will not affect. I'm saying this to my colleagues, the investors, either on the treasury bill, promissory note. I want to assure you, yourself, but I'm sure at some point we need to sit down and see what is that we can do without you suffering. We do it in a proper way. The approach is carefully designed to reflect Malawi's specific economic and institutional context and will be implemented in collaboration with all of you that are here. Budget formulation. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the 2026-2027 national budget will be anchored on the Malawi 2063 10-year implementation plan, MIP1, and the National Economic Recovery Plan, with continued prioritization of economic stabilization and investment in key productive sectors of agriculture, tourism, mining, and manufacturing. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the success of the forthcoming budget will depend on your constructive, evidence-based input that is cognizant of the prevailing fiscal constraints, reinforcing government's commitment to open dialogue and inclusive national planning, development planning. I know I think our Master of Ceremony did indicate that it will only be question and answers, but where it is necessary, I'm sure we'll be able to answer questions. It's very important, because I don't want anybody to leave this place with unanswered questions, particularly if they are critical, and that will help us to develop our economy. I sincerely thank you for your continued cooperation and for your constructive engagement in this important national exercise. Thank you very much.
Another big hand to the Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister has clearly set the pace and outlined the focus area in this year, and he therefore is requesting all of us to give him support. At the same time, we should make constructive evidence-based inputs into the budget. Moving from here, we have a number of presentations, and we will start with a presentation which will come from the Minister of Finance, which will be back-to-back with the Reserve Bank of Malawi. Thereafter, we shall have a presentation from Economics Association of Malawi. Thereafter, a presentation from Malawi Economic Justice Network. Thereafter, we shall have a presentation by Luana. Then we shall have a presentation by Link for Education Governance. Thereafter, we shall have a presentation by Malawi Health Equity Network. After that, we shall get into discussions and the inputs from the floor. At this point in time, allow me therefore to invite the Director of Economic Affairs in the Ministry of Economic Planning and Decentralization, in the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Decentralization, Madam Else Salima, to give us a presentation, and she will immediately be joined by an official from the Reserve Bank to complement the presentation, which will give us a picture of the economy. Madam Director.
Yeah, so thank you, Honourable Minister, ST, Governor. All protocols observed. So, as the Honourable Minister indicated, we are here to listen, not to talk a lot. But considering the matter at hand, we decided to prepare a presentation to give you the status of the economy, so that you have an idea, we have a context in which we discuss our issues. So it's not a very long presentation, it's a brief one, just 4 slides. And the Reserve Bank, they also have 4 slides, and then we'll hand over to the other presentations. So I'm missing a pointer. You know, as economists, we usually present data with graphs. So I wanted to be pointing, but it's fine. I'll manage. So the outline of the presentation is as follows. We'll have an introduction, and then we'll give you a GDP trend for the past 10 years. And then we'll also give you the revenues and expenditures, how they have performed in the past 10 years, the current stock of public debt, exports, imports, that relationship. And we'll also give you another relationship to do with the exchange rate, inflation, and public debt, and also the lending and deposit rates, including interest rates spread for the selected SADC countries. And then we'll move on to government reforms, what government is currently doing, and we'll conclude. So in terms of introduction, we are saying over the past decade, the country has been experiencing recurrent shocks. Yeah, we are saying over the past 10 years, the country has been experiencing shocks, recurrent shocks, periods of modest recovery, persistent structural vulnerabilities that will form the formulation of the 2026-27 national budget. This is just to say that as we are formulating the budget, we'll consider what has been happening or what Malawi has been experiencing in the recent past. And then, considering what has been happening, in response, government has been implementing various reforms. However, economic performance has largely been constrained by those factors that we've listed there, which include reduced growth, high inflation, high public debt, persistent fiscal deficits, external imbalances leading to persistent foreign exchange shortages. And as I'm presenting, I will talk more about these variables. And then we are saying all these challenges underscore the need for government to make decisive shift towards a more resilient and productive and self-sustaining growth. So there we have a graph whereby we are showing you how, as an economy, we've been growing over the past 10 years, from 2015 to 2024. You will notice that growth has been volatile over the past 10 years, going as low as 0.8%. That was in 2020. That's the year when we had the COVID pandemic, and also going as high as 5.7%. So there you notice that the blue line, that's the actual growth that we've been experiencing. The orange line, that's the target. So from 2015 to 2019, that's when we had the MGDS, and we, as a country, we had targeted to be growing by 7%, and over that period, you'll notice that we didn't manage to reach that growth. Even though in 2019, we tried our best, but we couldn't reach it. And then from 2020 to 2024, that's where we have from 2021, I think, that's when we had the Malawi 2063, the MIP, the 10-year MIP. And then you also notice that the growth has just been volatile. We could not reach the 6% that we need to have as an economy in order to have an impact even on our poverty. So that's what the chart clearly shows, that the gap has been widening. There has been very big growth shortfalls, and especially in those years that I've mentioned, 2020 and 2022. And the factors that have affected growth in those years, it's the COVID, as mentioned, climate shocks, and macroeconomic stability. However, you notice that as an economy, even as you look at our economy, the capacity to reach the optimum growth, those targets that we've been putting there, is there, as witnessed in that year. And even in the past year, it's not shown there. I think, was it in 2008, we grew actually beyond those targets. So what we are saying, the potential is there, we just have to put things in place. The next slide, that's the fiscal performance, and that's the main issue that we'll be discussing here today, revenue and expenditure. And on that graph, the blue line, that's the actual revenue that we've been collecting as a country, and the orange bars, not line, bars, orange bar, it's the expenditure. And then what you see below there, that's the deficit. You will notice that our revenue has been lower than our expenditure, actually in all the years. And that has translated to the deficit that you're seeing below there, the gray line. Meaning that that gray line, those bars that are below there, that's the amount of money that we've been borrowing in order to finance our budget. Then we are saying the revenue inflows have been affected by several factors, low tax compliance, and I guess these are the issues that we need to be discussing here, debating and strategizing the way forward on how we can reverse the situation. We have the low tax compliance, where we are saying we tend to have so many demands when it comes to government services. We all need government services when it comes to health sector, education sector, and all those public infrastructure. But when it comes to compliance, I think we are not doing well. We need to improve when it comes to tax compliance, so that a government is able to have resources for the much needed services it is supposed to provide. And then there is also limited enforcement of tax policy, limited economic productivity as a country. We are not productive enough. And you also agree with me, there is the large informal sector. Our informal sector is huge to an extent that it's affecting the tax collection. I know MRA has been trying and is trying to formalize the informal sector, but we are still not yet there. The informal sector is still too huge. It needs to be formalized to come into the formal. Limited automation of payment systems, and you agree with me that Malawi is still a cash-based economy, and we need to automate, to use the automation systems when it comes to revenue collection in order to collect more. And then we have the low disbursements of grants, whereby you notice that by the end of the financial year, what was committed is less than, or what has been disbursed is less than what was committed at the beginning of the year. So these are the factors that we thought we need to outline. Those are the ones that are affecting our revenue collection. And there on the graph, I just wanted to also mention that you will notice that in the year 2021-2022, there is some dip there, whereby we collected less and also spent less. This is the year when we were transitioning from the July-June calendar year to the April or March financial year. That's the year we had only 9 months. That's why the revenues and the expenditures seem to be lower than expected. And then this slide is just summarizing that, as I've explained, over the years, on average, we've been collecting 16% of GDP in terms of revenue, and spending around, on average, 22%, which means the difference there, that's the deficit, and that's what we've been borrowing to finance our budget. And then this is the last slide from the fiscal side, where we are showing you the public debt stock for the past 10 years. You will notice that from 2015 there, our debt stock has been hovering around, the font is small. In 2017, the external debt was around 1.29. So on this graph, the blue line, that's the domestic debt, and the orange line, that's the external debt. Take note that those numbers that are on top, it's not the total amount of domestic debt. That's just the external. The total, I think you can do the mathematics to get the total amount. So in 2017, our debt was around 2 or thereabout, maybe 3 or 2 point something. Domestic was 1.17, and then external was 1.29, steadily increasing up until 2020, where the domestic was 1.5 and then the external was 2.11. And then in those years, external was higher than the domestic. And then come 2021, that's when it switched, whereby the external was now higher than the domestic. Before that, domestic, external seemed to be higher than domestic. But then from 2021, external was higher than the domestic debt. Through the years to 22, 23, up until 2025, whereby we are saying currently our domestic debt is higher than our external debt. So there has been a switch between the external and domestic. But overall, what we are saying is that total public debt has grown from 3.64 trillion in 2020 to 22.4 trillion as of September 2025. Maybe some of you may say we've been talking about 21.6. So this data usually comes with a quarter lag. So when the Honorable Minister was mentioning about 21.6, that was during the presentation of the mid-year budget, we had not computed the numbers for September. So it comes with a quarter lag. That's why now we are talking of a 2.4 trillion as of September 2025. And then of that amount, domestic debt is higher. It's supposed to be 65 there. 65% of the total public stock. And then we are saying on the last bullet that the high debt level has exerted huge pressure on our budget, mainly due to high interest payments obligations, currently at 2.27 trillion in 2025-26 financial year. So you already noticed that we are talking of over 2 trillion paying in terms of interest. And when you add the wages and salaries, you will notice that the whole amount of our domestic debt is almost consumed with those 2 or 3 variables. So from here, I will hand over to my colleague from the RBM to take you through the monetary sector. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, ST, and Governor, I will continue from where my friend has stopped, especially to give you the flavor of how the economy has performed over the past 10 years. And in my case, I'll give you how we have performed with regard to the exchange rate, inflation, as well as external debt and the external sector. So I will start with how we have performed in the external sector. I have a graph there before you, which is showing developments in imports, exports, as well as the exchange rate. So you notice from the chart that from 2015, the exchange rate has been adjusted from around 600 Malawi kwacha per US dollar to the current level of 1,750 kwacha per US dollar. At the same time, you will see that the red line, which is imports, it has also increased to where we were in 2015, now close to 4 billion US dollars. Close to 4 billion US dollars. And then you will see that below there we have our exports, which is flat, around 1 billion. From 2015 to now, we have not moved much. So, as you can see, in an ideal situation, you expect that when you adjust the exchange rate, you are supposed to contract imports. At the same time, you boost exports. But in our case, the opposite is happening. Imports are increasing when we have adjusted the exchange rate and exports have remained flat. So this shows that there is something fundamentally or structurally wrong which we need to correct. Because when you adjust the exchange rate, especially by devaluations or depreciations, we should expect to close the gap between imports and exports. So our trade balance should have been closing. We should have been going towards the positive balance. But instead, the deficit is growing. So there is something fundamental that we need to address instead of just looking at the exchange rate, as has been the case. In the next graph, I will show you developments in the exchange rate with vis-a-vis public debt, as well as inflation. So as you can see, the red line there is showing the exchange rate per US dollar. And then we have the bar charts, which are showing the levels of public debt from 2015 as well as all the way to 2025. And then we have the inflation. So I'll start with the inflation. When you look at 2022 and 2023, 2022 we adjusted the exchange rate by 25%. I think we all remember that. And then we adjusted the exchange rate again in 2023 by around 44%. So you can see the relationship between the exchange rate and inflation is almost one-to-one. You adjust the exchange rate, immediately inflation rose. And then same thing happened again in 2023. So, because when you adjust the exchange rate, especially by devaluations or depreciations, we should expect to close the gap between imports and exports. So our trade balance should have been closing. We should have been going towards the positive balance. But instead, the deficit is growing. So there is something fundamental that we need to address instead of just looking at the exchange rate, as has been the case. In the next graph, I will show you developments in the exchange rate with vis-a-vis public debt, as well as inflation. So as you can see, the red line there is showing the exchange rate per US dollar. And then we have the bar charts, which are showing the levels of public debt from 2015 as well as all the way to 2025. And then we have the inflation. So I'll start with the inflation. When you look at 2022 and 2023, 2022 we adjusted the exchange rate by 25%. I think we all remember that. And then we adjusted the exchange rate again in 2023 by around 44%. So you can see the relationship between the exchange rate and inflation is almost one-to-one. You adjust the exchange rate, immediately inflation rose. And then same thing happened again in 2023. So every time we adjust the exchange rate, inflation responds immediately and in a negative way. At the same time, I want to highlight the point that every time we adjust the exchange rate, we are also affecting our position on the external debt. So, because this external debt it has to be revalued in kwacha terms. So you adjust the exchange rate, then it's also affecting the levels of your debt. So you see that there was no new borrowing from 2021 to 2025 externally, but debt levels have gone up. That's not a result of new borrowing, but it's a result of revaluation because of the exchange rate movement. So the point I want to highlight there is that, yes, debt levels have gone up, but it's a result of exchange rate adjustment. Yes, there's been new borrowing on the domestic front, but not on the external front. The external front, debt has gone up because of adjustment in the exchange rate. Also, on the domestic, debt has gone up because government has to respond to the shocks that my sister talked about. Every time there's a disaster, we have had cyclones, we have had El Nino. Right now, the minister is grappling to buy food and feed our population. So that is also feeding into the public debt. So on the domestic front, debt is rising because we have to respond to the natural disasters that we have experienced over the years. The last chart that I have for you is how we have fared in terms of interest rates. On this one, I think the focus should be on the interest rate spread. You will notice that Malawi stands out in the region. I've given you some examples there from countries around the region. You will see that Malawi stands out in terms of interest rate spread. Our interest lending rates are around 37%, and our deposit rate is around 4%, giving us a spread of 33%. When you look around the region, say Botswana, you see that the spread is around 2% or 3% thereabout. South Africa, around there as well. But Mozambique, Zambia, and Malawi, we seem to be bad neighbors there. Our interest rate spread is quite high. So these are the issues now, as my friend indicated, these are the issues that we need to be discussing. How best can we manage this situation? Can our economy grow with an interest spread of that magnitude? I think this is the question that we need to be answering in this room. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, ST and Governor. This is what I had to present for you. Thank you.
I don't know whether, can I come in now just to add? America has pulled out most of the grants. They want to move from aid to trade. And also, one of our major budget support has been UK. They have also announced that they're going to reduce, not only in Malawi, but everywhere else. So where do we go now? It means if we are to address that gap or that deficit, most of the measures should be internal, because the external is limited. I don't know, we are together? How do we address that deficit without depending on external support? What are we supposed to do? That's where I will talk about the tough decision that we make. We can decide that that deficit should remain as is, which I think no one would want to see, or can decide that deficit. That deficit. In order to reduce that deficit, we have three options, which I think no one would want to see. Reduce the actual borrowing, or the amount that we borrow. We should also reduce interest rates. That's the room we have. In order to reduce statutory expenditures, as you know, salary and three options. They are rigid. They can only go up, because you can't reduce people's salaries. So, reduce the actual borrowing, so the amount that we borrow. The statutory expenditures are here to stay. The only room that we have is looking at the actual borrowing interest rates. At interest rates, that's the room we have. But on the statutory expenditures, as you know, salary wages, they are rigid. They can only go up. Because you can't reduce people's salaries. So the statutory expenditures are here to stay. The only room that we have is looking at the actual borrowing at interest rates. Also look at the exchange rate. Because from the presentation that my colleague had presented, it showed that one of the factors that we, as we are discussing, creating our problem, we need to agree how do we address that gap there. That's where we need your assistance. That's where we need your views. Can we go to a graph on exports, imports, and the exchange rate? Right? Immediately, we see companies announcing, as my colleague said, of their prices of their commodities. So the question is, what should we do with regard to managing the deficit? This is the question that I want you, maybe as we are discussing, we need to agree how do we address that gap there. That's where we need your assistance. That's where we need your views. Can we go to a graph on exports, imports, and the exchange rate? As my colleague said, the dotted line there that you see is the where we had a devaluation. I don't know whether you have a pointer. Where I can point? Or I can just point myself. I can point. If you look at here, if you see here, on the exports, down, and in fact you go down, exports have remained unchanged, but we had a devaluation there. If you see that, there was a devaluation. And then we also had another devaluation where you see there was a steep increase there. But our exports remained unchanged. You and me, we learned in class. You and me, we learned that when you devalue, you make your exports cheaper. And you make your imports expensive. In other words, you have to export more than what you import by way of devaluation. This graph is telling us, in our case, in our particular case, you devalue, where you see this step, that's where the evaluation. And at the very end, where you also see the steep, there's also a devaluation, particularly where that side. That's where and you'll see that after that devaluation, that's where you see the imports going up, and you see the exports remaining static against the theory of Lent. As I've said, we all learned that You exchange you adjust your exchange rate, immediately the exports will be cheaper. Now the question I want to ask my colleagues that are here. I don't have the answer. I know we have lectures here. There are also some that taught me economics M101. What is wrong with us? There must be something structurally wrong in our economy, which is why are we against economic theory? I don't know whether I should add more there. But it's just a question. Again, I don't have an answer. Let's go to exchange rate and inflation. Again, if you check the exchange rate, the red line, that's the exchange rate. And where you see, I don't know whether those that have the arrow, you can show there where the places where we had a devaluation, if you can show it. There we had a devaluation, and also we had another devaluation there. When you devalue, you find out that the blue line, which is representing headline inflation, also goes up immediately, as I've indicated. Immediately, it goes up. And then you also look at I think there's another graph where you are showing public debt, because I'm sure you know that because of the exchange rate risk that we take when you borrow outside, particularly in an instability, the economy is unstable, your public debt also goes up. Meaning, of course, there are so many factors that will lead to increased public spending or expenditure. One is the actual borrowing, as we have indicated. Two is on what interest rate, as I've said, exchange rate. So one of the challenges that we have as a ministry is that's why I've been saying, yes, a devaluation, where it is necessary, it has to be done. But devaluation is not a panacea. Let me repeat, but it is one of the solutions. I'm not saying it's not. So if we are to address our challenge, it means we need to have a cocktail of policies. Because if we only rely on exchange rate, that's what we see on the graph. I rest my case. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Another big hand to the Minister. Now, we'll go to the next presentation, but the following presentations will be very strict to time. We have been allocated 10 minutes, and let's try as much as possible to make our presentation within that 10 minutes. At this point, let me invite Economics Association of Malawi to make a presentation let's focus on the key issues that we want to submit for the budget formulation. Thank you.
Most of them are inefficient, they are highly indebted, and also dependent on government support. And this has actually been increasing the debt that the government is also incurring, because every year they have to fund the SOEs, which normally they are not bringing enough dividends. Issues of FISP have always been highlighted. I will not highlight them much here, but we believe that if we can also shift attention to the mega farms, which have potential to even stabilize food supply, but also increase exports, Honorable Minister, we might be going in the right direction. However, like I said, we will focus on the proposals, and these are our proposals, Honorable Minister, and first talk of revenue mobilization. Much as I talked about the SOEs, the report that we shared with you, Minister, is also talking about reforms in these SOEs that will minimize fiscal risks. And most of them, we are linking recapitalization of SOEs to credible performance audits. Because, Honorable Minister, if you are recapitalizing an SOE which is year in, year out making losses, it's like you are recapitalizing the losses. And I think this needs to be taken seriously, especially on the issues of performance audits. We also noted that some SOEs would want to price whatever they offer us properly to reflect the rates which are prevailing on the market. However, maybe when these are taken to the necessary office to allow them to adjust, they are not maybe politically palatable. And so we're asking that maybe support should be provided for a phased adjustment of tariffs towards cost-reflective rates, because we might be accusing them of making losses year in, year out, while we are failing to allow them to make costs that are reflective of what is prevailing out there. In our research, we also noted that there are some SOEs which are not, the roles and their mandates are not clearly outlined, and these can be combined. Very good example was the Cannabis Regulatory Authority and the Poisons Board. I think these needs to be relooked, Honorable Minister, if cannabis is cannot fit into the poison mandate. Also, strengthen engagement with development partners, especially to improve the inflow of foreign exchange, either through ODA or FDI. Honorable Minister, the DPs have been complaining, especially maybe on the policy credibility, which we believe can be done, but also the implementation of PFM reforms, which normally also highlight some inconsistencies that if we do better, we might be attracting what we have been losing. A key in our presentation is on the broadening tax base. We've been talking about this as ECAMA, and we know that there are policies that have been made, especially on the residential property tax, which was talked about at the mid-year. But, Honorable Minister, if we look at, I think, 2-3 months down the line, we might not see significant changes. Why we're saying this is, for example, we've seen the residential area has moved out of the city boundaries. If you go to Airwing and all other areas which are outside, they don't exist within the city boundaries. If you go to Luntha, those who are affluent have moved out of the cities. They are going to Mpemba, Chireka, Lunzu, and that area. And I think this is an area that we need to relook and move with speed, because Those we need to tax. If we look at the population of Malawi, a large population is in the rural. And we need those in the urban, but the urban are moving out of the areas that we would rather tax. So this is, I think, that we need to leverage also digital systems, minimize evasion in these areas, and even I think areas like Area 36 in Ghana going there, they are outside. So these need to be taken into Area 24 and what, so that at least when we're talking about property tax, we are including everyone who is indeed in the city. And the issues of encouraging formalization of the informal sector, I noted on the informal sector issue and how it is actually contributing negatively to the country's revenues. However, we've seen that there isn't much that has been done, and actually we are seen as encouraging informalization. A study was taken just to understand even the underground economy, Honorable Minister, and Professor Chipeta looked at this from, I think, 1972 to 1990. The economy was about 17.5%. Over the years, the underground economy, Honorable Minister, has been increasing up to the point of reaching 46.8%. And if we look at the revenue that, that could have otherwise been taxed, is also a lot. It is actually supporting the 5% growth that we talk about increasing, probably 7% and more. This is something that I think we need to look at, Honorable Minister. And issues of tax exemptions are also key, especially in churches. And one thing that also came out strongly was taxing the digital economy, which we are actually living out. We are seeing commerce shifting online. We have about 3.95 million internet users. And while taxing mobile transactions, gambling, and on, but there is still a gap. And we need the laws and mechanisms in place just to tax it. Honorable Minister, this is not just coming from the blues. We have countries that are doing this. We have Kenya, we have Nigeria, and issues of the transactions in crypto, which are huge. The youth and this younger generation, they have moved their transactions online. They are actually doing cross-border. They are trading even in WhatsApp and everything, but they are not paying anything. So we need to modernize the tax system, and this we will not overburden the labor which we are taxing highly, but also the SMEs which we will now allow them to grow. These are examples, Honorable Minister, of countries that are doing digital transactions and taxing. Internet users. Rwanda having 18% VAT, and we have Kenya with VAT and also digital services tax. We have Nigeria, South Africa, Tanzania, and many other countries which we can actually see. And on expenditures, Honorable Minister, I would also want us to talk the talk, walk the talk, looking at the manifesto that we had, that will be actually reducing we will be talking of fiscal consolidation, actually, measurable savings of 500 billion in 26, 701.5 trillion in 2018. And this has been taken directly from the manifesto, and it highlights those measures. And we believe that if we can actually just pick 5 from what has been proposed, we would be not talking about maybe the Reserve Bank financing government expenditures or financing the government deficit and so on, but we will be actually doing the right thing in consolidating our expenditures. And we also have a few structural reforms, Honorable Minister, especially when we're talking about exports there. We need to attach performance-based conditions to input loans. And if we can even ask those who have large farms to just take maybe 60% of maize production through recoverable input loans, and then targeting those large-scale farmers with proven capacity, then we should be able to stabilize the food supply, but also the exports. We have export-oriented crops which can be supported, the industrial raw materials which can also be supported, and the market institutions with anchor farms and the structured markets. And also in tourism, Honorable Minister, we've seen that we only talk about the lake. Tourism, but if we can align these maybe with activities that happen in the country. For example, you align Ulakwaro, you align the Chewa, the Yao, the Ngoni, with what happens in these. I think the tourists will be actually be getting a whole flavor of the Malawian culture, and they'll be paying for this, but also bringing in sports into the lake, so that at least we'll be getting something from that. Issues of central bank independence came out highly, Honorable Minister, because we've seen that this is also supporting the issue of deficit financing, and I think if we can pursue these measures that we're talking about, we will not even be bashing the Reserve Bank of Malawi for financing the government. Honorable Minister, let me stop there, but these are our submissions to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bangara, for the presentation. The next one is the Malawi Economic Justice and Network. Please, considering that we are also submitting the written presentation, let us stick within the time so that we should be able to give space to others, and then we wind up at the appropriate time. I give you the time. I start counting from now.
Thank you so much, the moderator, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Decentralization, Honorable Joseph Machola Mwanamveka MP, the Secretary to the Treasury, the Reserve Bank Governor, and let me also ride on all the protocol that has been observed. Thank you. My name is Betha. I'm from Malawi Economic Justice Network. I bring to you the evidence-based budget submissions into the 2026-27 financial year national budget that we have been generating as an institution from the 12 districts that we have up and running interventions ranging from 5 to 8 years, but also interventions around data and tax justice, fighting inequalities project, tikwanilise kuteteza maufulu ana project, but also lastly the natural resource governance and climate justice projects, just to mention a few. I bring the slides representing the fundamental breakdown of the major issues and also some recommendations that we're doing as an institution. Our methodology has been that we do budget analysis year in, year out, simplifying and understanding the figures that are presented, and the recent one being the mid-year budget review, which you presented, Honorable Minister. We did an analysis, but also the presentation is premised from the citizen engagement that we've been working in the 12 districts that I mentioned, the service delivery satisfaction surveys that we do, particularly also the documentation that we do harvest as an institution. Major issues and findings as follows. Number one, as an institution and also as Megin, we observed the credibility of the macroeconomic assumptions. That has always been a challenge. Number two is the whole issue of lower than expected revenue collection and the expenditure slippages that we see year in, year out. But also rigid expenditures, including interest, but also public debt, that have significantly curtailed government fiscal space. The fourth issue is the issue of public debt stock continuing to grow, as already alluded to speakers that have come before me. Lastly is the whole issue of high cost of treasury notes continuing to dominate the deficit financing. So issue by issue, we provide some recommendations as per alluded to our budget analysis. Number one, the issue around credibility of the macroeconomic assumptions. We see that there are always revisions that do happen, but also not tallying to the initial projections. We talk about gross domestic product, the GDP growth, inflation, monetary policy, but also exchange rate. So what are we recommending really? We say we need policy consistency. Let the inflation curtailing the productivity, that should be enhanced. We need to have the budget that is speaking to the national blueprint, the policies that we have at hand. Let me backtrace also that during our yearly analysis, we've noted that the budget itself do not tally comprehensively with the Malawi 2063 agenda, particularly the MIP1, that the model of National Planning Commission has been set aside, and many are the times that we see the budget not speaking to the model put by National Planning Commission. So we need that policy coherency at that macro level. Secondly is the issue of exchange rate, that we need to speed up the implementation of the supply side programs that can bolster the export position, but also the mining sector. Issue number two, Honorable Minister, around lower than expected revenue collection. We continuously to appreciate that there has been huge variances in terms of the actual projection, but also in terms of the projection and the actuals, that the variance has been there. This actually is being explained that actual domestic revenue has consistently remained below the domestic resource mobilization strategy targets each year, showing a recurring gap that revenue mobilization capacity has through MRA, but also means of finance at large. And so we see low but inadequate improvement in the revenue generation. So what are the observations? Significant underperformance. We are recommending that let us strengthen engagement with the development partners. We also appreciated through the budget analysis that there has been even delays in the implementation of projects affecting both bilateral and multilateral capital grant disbursement. On this one, we are pleading and lobbying that let us accelerate project implementation. We should not have up and running contracts with our donor partners, but fail to access the funding because of delays in project implementation, under the premise circumstance that our envelope is already in a deficit. Thirdly, we're talking about over-reliance on external financing, contributing to the expose of the budget and uncertainties. All that are attributing to the fact that we continue to see low but very low and met projections in terms of revenue generation. Quickly, the third issue is on public debt stock that continues to grow, driving large primary deficits, but also exchange rate pressures. I wouldn't spend much time on that. We see net borrowing exceeding projections. In the analysis, we saw 32%. That is a physical slippage that wouldn't see that projection going as much as 32% when we know the net borrowing is actually well planned for. But also an overshot of domestic borrowing. We must curb this appetite to borrow domestically, rising borrowing levels, and just to mention a few. What are we recommending? Let us strengthen the medium-term strategy and limit new borrowings to concessional terms. We need to strengthen expenditure controls, just to mention a few, but also to reduce non-essential spending and intensify domestic resource mobilization. Lastly, we're talking about strengthening coordination with the development partners. Let us benefit all the resources that we are into agreement with our donor partners. Lastly is the whole issue of social welfare sector. We are talking about the citizens here. We are talking about the welfare of Malawians. And so it is very imperative that we also appreciate the challenges that we've been seeing in terms of social welfare spending. The figures indicate a departure also in terms of mid-year performance on social protection allocations, showing huge variances. What are we saying? We observe underfunding in the social welfare sector. That only in the last, in the current budget, by mid-year term, we only have accumulated 36% of the mid-year allocation, having a huge variance of 63.4%. We need to consider social sector investment. Funding partners do not consistently support the programs. I like it that this ministry is now talking about decentralization. We're talking about physical decentralization. Let us be able to decentralize the resources down to the people. So what are we recommending leaders merging? Let's prioritize timely disbursement in the social welfare programs. Malawians are crying out there. I talked about the citizen engagement work that we're doing with them. Things are not as rosy as they have been. Lastly, you talked about evidence, Honorable Minister. I just want to show you some of the pictures that we've been able to solicit just by going through Nchinji and Balaka. When we say social sector investment, those are the classrooms that we are really talking about, that we need to have resources going down to the ground. These are documentaries and pictures captured, validated at council level, and duly approved for what is happening. So these are the toilets where girls are going into structures. These are the bridges children are passing through. Now we talk about climate-related shocks that are being met up with. This is a hostel, a classroom stroke a hostel, where girls would learn in the morning, in the evening they would sleep and use as a hostel. This is a waste incinerator that is in one of the hospitals close to the school. They are burning injections and learners would go pick one or so. Social protection for children is compromised. This is one of the schools. This is a class, the head teacher operating like in that form, but particularly taking that as his office. These are office blocks. Now the teacher to pupil ratio, that is that, how we're faring in the ground. All that culminating into the issue that we need social sector investment. A maternity wing in Kalembo, one of the districts. And so this is one of the 9-year-old Lena, the first deputy speaker of Child Parliament in Balaka, and she says, I carry a heavy heart for our nation's future. I dream of becoming a doctor for Malawi, but this dream is crushed daily as we fight to learn in conditions that break our bodies and spirits. Imagine nearly 3,000 children cramming together, sharing one teacher's book, straining our eyes from the distance. So that's just one of the evidence that we're talking about, that social investment is very key. Lastly, as an advocate, as advocates for climate justice financing, we're also seeing severe centralization. About 98% of the resources are centrally controlled. We are seeing misaligned priorities, also looking into what people are being affected in terms of climate effect down, but also we are seeing over-reliance on donor support in terms of climate financialization. This is the budget analysis and snapshot of the insufficiency that we are talking about. So it's an advocacy and a lobby to say that let us decentralize these resources, reaching out to the people as much as they can. And so we have some recommendations also for climate justice and governance financing. Lastly, I would conclude quoting your quote that, Mr. Speaker, sir, the National Economic Recovery Plan focuses on fiscal consolidation and creating fiscal space for strategic investment in key sectors. Megan believes that investment in children, climate change, but also social protection would be some of the strategic investment in the economy of Malawi at large, amplifying the effort of industrializing mining. With that few submissions, I thank you, Honorable Minister, and all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Megan. Thank you for your submission, and we also expect to have the written submission submitted. At this point in time, allow me to invite Professor Kennedy Machira from Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources to make his submission on behalf of the academia. Professor Machira, please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I would like on the protocols of those that have gone before me. I'm going to actually have my presentation outlined by those 4 pointers. In terms of key issues, as you have rightly said, Honorable Minister, that we just need to hit direct to the points. Agriculture and the national economy. Within this particular fiscal year, 2026-2027, agriculture, we need, Honorable Minister, to actually refocus so that we can control food inflation. Instead of taking business as usual, in as far as the agricultural investment is concerned, I wish to actually consider that we actually implement a serious private sector-led mega farming model, which is actually involve even the youth to be attached there. Instead of the youth, maybe when they graduate from the university, they should be taken under internship to work in the formal sector economy and other ministries. We should target that all agricultural students and those that are related, they should be attached in such particular sector so that they can improve on the efficiency. And in this particular part, we wanted to actually put a specific budget line which can be a revolving fund targeting the private sector mega farming investment. We cannot lose on that particular front. So that's point number one. I think since we are going to have a boardroom meeting, we can actually highlight much on that particular part. And the second point, we have got an issue. Aquaculture is money. No one can grow fish to eat at his house. We can actually use aquaculture and invest in it and earn more revenue because we can produce more and export within our region. We have got lady markets where that people can like our fish, but that area is not yet well established. If we can take Madeko during that time, it used to do better, and it used to produce more, and it used to make revenue it used to bring in more forex on that particular point. So I want us to make focus on that. And if I can recall, last year in the same room, and as far as the mining is concerned, I actually reiterate that we should, as a government, take a serious look at mining, because that's where we can leverage our Malawi kwacha because of gold that we have in the country. And I reiterated last year to say we should be able to have universities, students learning or even assigned to learn about the mineral identification, mineral classification, and mineral processing, so that as a country, we can actually leverage that. instead of having foreign people coming in our land, digging our mineral and take them out in our porous borders, we should be able to earn more. As a country, we are losing a lot on that particular point, Honorable Minister. And in terms of smallholder farmers, I wish to suggest at this particular point, Honorable Minister, that we have got informal sector. Majority of them, they are smallholder farmers. Now, we have got a challenge to buy fertilizer each and every time, which is a very huge amount. But if we can invest as a country in a paradigm shift where farmers can actually make organic manure, we can actually, an indigenous way of accessing inputs, we can actually do better from that particular front. Because we can actually minimize forex stress as a result of getting fertilizer. When people at this particular moment are not good at eating chemicals, they want to be eating non-chemical foods. So that can be an alternative which we can be able to actually bring forward in that particular part. And at the same time, we need as a country to have specific crops which we can invest and say these crops are our national crops. And we, as a country, we should look at the whole value chain and look at where we can be able to have a country to country or a government to government marketing of such particular crops which can grow on their behalf. For example, soybean is actually needed out there. We can actually make more in the soybean alone. And we can have even our own sugar here. We can actually do more in that particular part. But you can actually see that whatever we actually do in terms of supporting this particular part, we don't have got much focus on that. And I remember it was during your time in that other regime, you almost struck a deal with the South Sudan. So we need to actually bring back such particular deals as governments, so that whatever we can produce here should have the ready markets, and you can have government to government remittances in as far as the money can come. In the end, you can end up leveraging that. And I wanted to make mention here, like a National Food Reserve Agency and ADMAC, they can have like common laws, but if I could recall ADMAC during the old time, it used to have a system where it could find markets ready for any crop that farmers were growing. So at the end of the year, when farmers they have grown, those particular crops could be taken outside the country and we could have revenue immediately entering into the country, leveraging ourselves. So we need to look at how we can restructure ADMAC so that it can be acting as a base for commodity exchange management, so that it can control the structured market of all commodities instead of letting it in the hands of the vendors and those that can come and cheat our farmers and get their crop for nothing. And in terms of, we call it, I can call it Mamega farm angona angono. It's a common thing that all of us have been saying. Mamega farm angona angono is the likes of Director Salima there, who is a graduate, has a 10 hectare of farm. These people, if we can give them leverage, Honorable Minister, 10 of these particular people can actually bring in revenue. And they cannot run away because you know where they are. Instead of not targeting them, relying on a smallholder farmer who has less than 1 hectare of land, we are losing out on that particular part. And if we can be able, at this moment, Honorable Minister, targeting this, I'm calling it agri-investment revolving fund, targeting the middle scale, mamega farm, angono type of people, we can actually earn more in this particular part. Because the Lungus here, the Kisas there, they are farmers. If they can consolidate their effort, we can actually grow more. We cannot run away, we can buy tractors, we can buy, even we can have our own dams, and we can leverage enough production which we can even give food aid to the people down there. And Honorable Minister, I've got some suggestions on a resource envelope sourcing of funding. Number one, we need as a country to create what is called produce cess tax. Produce cess tax. What is this tax? I'm mentioning my mega farm angon. Director Salima are in the farm. Tampa Sangongole alima 10 hectares of land. Then we can have, from whatever he has done, we can use AI to project whatever he's going to produce and then take 5% of that particular proceeds right away from the farm gate tax. This is actually done in other countries and it has seemed to push things ahead. In China, a farmer cannot produce without paying a sales tax. Here, you give somebody loan, you give somebody fertilizer, he harvests, he sells them outside. They can even run away because they don't have control mechanisms. So if we can produce this particular part, it can actually assist. But we can implement it gradually as a preamble. That's point number one. Targeting my mega farm, angono, those people whom I've classified as the elite to venture into farming. Another point is use of e-infrastructure for revenue generation tracking, Mr. Tambras. We need to have e-toll gates mounted somewhere. I don't know how much you can spend so that we can have e-number plates for cars and we can have e-tags for areas where people can create crimes, low traffic crimes, etc. You don't need to have a police officer taking money, writing a receipt. Automatically, an e-number plate, we can take that one automatically at your saver, you can be tracking the revenue that is actually making. When I'm going to actually have my license renewed, I pay those particular part. Cumulatively, we can actually leverage on that particular part. I was in Tanzania in one of the days. I was going into a bus. I actually see a gadget. My money, I received an EFT receipt right away from the bus, which you don't do in Malawi. Meaning that we can track even any revenue which is being collected along the way. Even in these land roads that are becoming very difficult, we can actually put an e-infrastructure to connect even whatever. Let me give me time. I've got important point to address the minister. Please, I know, Honorable Minister, you forgive me. Let me emphasize the point here. Very important. Now, we need to invest in these particular scenarios, Honorable Minister, so that we can actually collect as much. Because currently, without use of electronic mechanisms, then we are bound to lose quite a lot. And in terms of people that are like doing constructions, we always worry. Area 47, people are building mansions. In Kenya, you cannot start constructing without paying a development levy at every phase. It's a revenue. So we need to look at how we can build in. Because in the end, if people are not paying those particular levies, then they end up building substandard infrastructure, which can create even hazards to the people living in it. And at the same time, no one can actually do a research of any type without paying a levy for research. In Malawi here, people, they just come, do their research, they go. They pay ethical clearance fee very little, and they get information and publish more. We need to look at how best you can improve on that particular part as well, so that we can be able to actually make things work from that particular point. And at the same time, informal sector, we have been worried about informal sector is very huge. Most of them, they are failing to graduate into the formal sector so that we can actually do that particular part. We need, Honorable Minister, to find a way to license these particular people from the informal sector perspective so that things are actually working on that particular part. And we have seen Reserve Bank. Next to Reserve Bank building, they have got a pension, they have got a building which they have constructed, a very nice one, using pension funds. Now, is it possible, Honorable Minister, to allow maybe universities to use their pension funds to actually invest in infrastructure development, which can allow the universities to generate more commercial fee-paying programs so that in the process they can leverage more revenue from that particular point, so that in the long term it can minimize the stress of subsidizing their operations at that particular point. With that few remarks, I submit. Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Machira. At this point in time, let me invite Link for Education Governance. Mr. Kondowe, my humble request is for you to do the presentation within the 10 minutes. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, Reserve Bank Governor, and Secretary to the Treasury, let me guide on the established protocol. So I will present on education as one of a very important sector. So that is in terms of the outline. It's not responding. It's not responding. Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. So I thought for purposes of this discussion, we need to start with that quote to guide the conversation within the subsector. And that quote is from John, who says, education is not preparation for life, but rather life itself. And I think that signifies the importance of education and the social sector that Betha was talking about. And if you link that to Malawi 2063 agenda, it seeks to leverage and improve from the predicament that you are seeing in that photo to a situation that is not very good, but seemingly better. But key here is the issue of inclusion. Those with vulnerabilities being able to access education. Just quickly, from our budget tracking and analysis, what lessons have we drawn? I think key is to look at the investment trend within the education sector against the benchmarks that as a country we're a party to, and currently the investment does not meet benchmarks. But of worrying concern is investment in child protection subsector. If you look at the investment there, it's around 0.02, which is very low. And that is an area that perhaps government needs to respond to as you frame the budget. Now, from the mid-year review, there are some issues which are important in terms of the actuals. So if you look at that graph, the actuals are relatively lower than the projected. So meaning that even the allocations as approved are not displaced to the relevant cost centers as an issue. Just to sum up from the performance review, one is that cost centers are not spending as projected because the disbursements are relatively lower and usually late. of great significance is that capital expenditure for both Part 1 and Part 2 is quite dismal in the education subsector. And there should be a relook on that one as you frame the next budget. I will not dwell on these general observations because this presentation will be shared. But just to highlight that as we move forward, what are the priority areas for investment? And I think these have been partly defined by the DPP manifesto and already being implemented. So I think key is the famous free secondary education, which has already started to be rolled, but again with significant challenges. And this is just one key for us to appreciate. So government has taken out School Development Fund, which ranges from 40 to 55. But what has been provided is 33,900 per student. So already there is a deficit. What government is providing is not matching what the schools have been generating. Now the question is, how will the schools manage their operations with that deficit? So we're already starting at a very bad note. Examination and ID fees have also been taken out, and the projections from MANEP is that they need 11 billion for examination fees and IDs. There has been a commitment, but if the disbursement is not made as intended by tomorrow, that will compromise the integrity and security of examination. So that should also be a priority within that. Then disaster, already some schools have been affected. Those pictures are from quarter. So the budget must respond to disaster preparedness and response because those challenges will continue to grow. Government adopted a new curriculum, which is linked to Malawi 2063, and there is need for investment for effective implementation of the new curriculum, which I think is promoting issues that Malawians have been craving for a long period of time in terms of edutech, innovation, etc., which are key for us. The issue of teacher recruitment and motivation, my sister Beth had hinted, suffice to indicate that with the introduction of free secondary education, there is a moratorium on recruitment, and that must be reconsidered because it has a huge implication on whether free secondary education will be implemented, among others. The issue of infrastructure, just to build on what Beth had indicated, is very key. I think we need to move away from simply promoting access. Access without quality means nothing, Honorable Minister. So I think investment that addresses quality becomes very, very key. Those are some of the recommendations. Because I'm submitting, I think I don't need to take much of the time. But I guess we all agree that we need to move beyond traditional sources of taxes. Well, we need to broaden, and those are some of the suggestions that we're making on that point. But that said, as I conclude, I want to leave us with this quote again, that it is easier to build strong children than to repair a broken man. So the investment in the children, the investment in the education sector is not a waste. It is an investment in the strategic area of importance in line with our Malawi 2063. Therefore, I submit, Honorable Minister, that Malawi's future will not be shaped by policy promises, but by budget choices that deliver results in classrooms and the communities. This is the only pathway that can keep Malawi 2063 agenda alive. I thank you and I submit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kondowe, for being precise and concise, straight to the point. The message has been delivered within 7 minutes. Thank you so much. At this point in time, let me invite the last presenter, and this is Malawi Health Equity Network.
Honorable Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Decentralization, we hereby make our presentation for the health sector, coming from Malawi Health Equity Network, as well as the partner civil society organizations, network members of Malawi Health Equity Network, for your consideration. We'll start with the sharing the current state. Firstly, on the ground, there have been major stockouts of medicines and medical stockouts. And also, when you look at the service level agreements between government and the CHAM facilities, do not cover almost everything. There has been rapid population growth and also increased numbers of road and the water transport accidents, rising burden of NCDs and the mental health. These are some of the key issues that have been affecting the health sector and they form part of the basis of our submission. We would want to start with the acknowledging some of positives. For example, the opening of the National Cancer Center. The past years, we have been asking for procurement of MRI scanners. We have seen them bought. And also, with regard to our recommendations for revenue collection domestically, we have been recommending the establishment of a national health fund. We are happy that in the DPP manifesto, this is there, and we are happy that there will not be redirected funding towards other places. Also, the commencement of the construction of the Luntha District Hospital, which we have been lobbying that all the cities should have district hospitals. The other one is introduction of direct facility financing. This we have been lobbying during the pre-budget consultations that as the schools have school improvement grants, the same should apply to the health sector. Now, coming to your question, Honorable Minister, on the fact that donor support is shrinking, where do we get the money? So we want to make the following recommendations so that our ASICs, when you ask where do we get the money, we point them out. Malawi has carbon tax, which we also lobbied. We wish to recommend that there should be carbon tax for foreign vehicles, those that come into the country. Even on a single day, they go back. That is what is happening in our neighboring countries. But in here, they just enjoy entry and exits. 50% of that should go to the National Health Fund. We also
recommend, noting that road accidents are eating into the health budget, there should be something, a top-up on the COF, Certificate of Fitness for vehicles, and there should be a removal of taxes on life jackets for people who are using boats, and introduce stiff penalties in terms of money for boats that are operating without life jackets. And there should be a system to identify people who are on medical scheme when they go to public facilities, and public facilities should get money from the companies. And government should stop double dipping, whereby civil servants are on medical scheme, including medical doctors. And when they are sick in their places, they can consume medicine free of charge, and yet government is paying premiums on them. So hospitals must be charging for any consumptions that they make. Considering increasing NCDs like diabetes, there should be taxes on sugary drinks. Our motorcycle operators must be paying something, and also there should be means to arrest theft and leakages of medicines in our health facilities. Now, our ASICs for the budget. This is a new song. In fact, I should have started with you, welcoming you back, Honorable Minister. You know about the Abuja 15% recommendation, which we have always been falling short of. Let us strive to meet this so that we can address as many challenges that we have. That would include the recruitment of healthcare workers and the buying of the medicines. We also want to lobby for medical training institutions that should be increased funding towards them. In particular, Kamuzu University for Health Sciences, KUHES. And complete Mponela and the Domas Community Hospitals, restore Kochirira Health Center, which used to be a community hospital, to go back to its old status. Continue to construct hospitals, district hospitals in the cities. And we need a dialysis machine at Nzuzu Central Hospital, as well as a stored oxygen plant project that is there. When we talk about health, we also talk about social determinants of health, and that include roads. So we recommend that outstanding roads need to be completed. We also recommend that the much recommended military hospital that came after the passing on of a former president must start. It is a recommendation, and we need a state-of-the-art hospital. We talked about life jackets, that we need to remove taxes. And there should be some funding within the health sector, which must specifically look at road accident survivors. They need catheters, for example, and others, which some of them cannot afford. Increase domestic financing for HIV, including ARTs, as government needs to do co-financing, and also acknowledging the donor support shrinking. We also recommend that government must be contributing to community-led monitoring. This is an initiative that provides governance or social accountability by communities. There's need to strengthen accountability on the money that is generated in our health facilities, including the paying wards. Issues of sanitation in our cities, like waste collection and dumping sites, also needs financing. Expand MARIP to many places so that the rural health facilities where child deliveries are done using light of a cell phone must be addressed. And expand service level agreements with CHAM facilities, that they should go beyond just looking at maternal and child health, but include essential health package. So this is our submission as the civil society organizations in the health sector. Thank you very much, Honorable.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Another big hand. That was a last presentation. Now, we have finished all the presentation we had today. We are now going to the discussions, whereby we're going to open the floor for whether questions or comments. Especially we are inviting for contribution, constructive contributions to the national budget. At this point, let me now invite the Secretary to the Treasury, Dr. Cliff Chunda, to take us through. And as we move into that section, we are invited to consider the questions which have been beamed on the screen, because I think in the process, we need to respond those questions as we develop the budget.
We have come to the end of the presentations, and on behalf of the Honourable Minister of Finance, let me commend all the presentations. They were really very rich presentations, and the presentations brought about various, which we can take on board. We are concluding the budget, and also the presentations have brought solutions which we need to consider as we are finalizing the budget. So once again, I think we need to give a round of applause for the presentations. Having said that, there were some questions that the Honourable Minister wanted to pose to the group so that we can leverage on those particular questions going forward. And then after, we'll go into a plenary whereby we will take maybe around 10 questions in total. We'll do 3 questions, maybe 3 questions at a time, and then possibly we will, either respond to such questions or take note of the issues raised and then conclude our discussions this morning in that kind of order. So at this stage, let me invite the Honourable Minister. He has those particular questions, and if I may give him the mic so that he can even add more on the questions. Over to you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. I think we have those, after our presentations, we have those questions that we need your guidance. First, how should the government reduce expenditure and public debt? How do we, can we come back?
Oh.
From the presentation, I'm sure we could see some, should I say, contradictions, where others saying cut expenditure, others saying give us more money. That's a challenge that as a minister we have. How do we balance the two? So we need, when you are making questions, observation, perhaps let's answer that question. What other revenue avenues can government explore to maximize revenue potential? I've taken note of some of the, I think, proposals. I don't know whether it was Imagine and others, those who have taken note, but that question had to be answered. What should the country do to generate more foreign exchange to improve foreign reserves and balance of payments? 4, how can the country improve its productive capacity to increase exports and reduce imports? And also, the last one, what should be done to reduce interest rate spread in order to encourage savings and allow intermediation? I don't know whether you can take me back to the presentation by Reserve Bank on the interest spread. Yeah, then that's a graph. I want us to answer the question, why are we, you look at other countries compared to Malawi, you find that in Malawi, our lending rates, the rate at which we borrow from banks, is on average 37.27. Against what we get when we deposit the money, 4.7. And therefore, the interest spread, in other ways, where banks make money, is 33%. Compared to other regions, other countries, I think the lowest was South Africa. I think it was South Africa here, RSA. The gap is only 3%. And the other one is Botswana. The question also I want to ask, at 37.7%, what kind of business would do and get a positive return on our investment or make profit at 37%? This is where we have a problem. I remember the presentation by Professor Mashira, where I was saying, yes, give money to small mega farms. Mega farm. In the countries where development has taken place, it's not necessarily government that gives the money. It's normally the commercial banks or the private sector. Now, at that rate, would SMEs, manufacturing companies, be able to make money if you borrow that rate? You get it? And then you look at the gap. What other countries have done, I just want to give examples. In other countries, what they have done In the South African scenario, why the rate is low, they have what they call undiplom law, where when a loan is non-performing, you have borrowed money, when it is performing, there's no issue. But the moment it becomes non-performing, you are not failing to pay, the interest that the bank will charge will never exceed the principal. The interest the interest charge should not exceed the principal. In the case of Kenya, I think the same anti-pram rule also applies to Botswana. It applies to other countries. In Kenya, they have just fixed the lending rate. They have said the lending rate should not exceed the 91 Treasury bill. In the other countries, they have just capped the spread. They have said the spread should be within this range. That's what other countries have done to avoid a scenario that we have. I'm not proposing anything. I'm only telling you what is on the ground. Because my worry, in fact, people normally say the private sector is not borrowing because it's the government that is overcrowding the private sector. That's what we say. But I thought one of the key issues is that who would borrow at that rate from SMEs now, they are failing to borrow. They have no access to loans because of that. Can you imagine if it was 7.16 like that of Botswana? What would have happened to this economy? How much value addition would have happened in Malawi? How much employment could have been done if the rate was at 7.16? So I ask the question again, what do we need to do? As I've said, we have professors here, Machira is one of them. You do research, what is it that can be done? Because that is the challenge that we have. Because you cannot fund all the small mega farms. It's not possible. Most of the countries have borrowed from the commercial banks. The other question that I wanted to pose is to do with education, and in particular, higher education, university. We have done an analysis. Almost all the public universities, in terms of finances, they're not performing. Most of them have huge, maybe arrears. Some of them are failing to pay pension. I heard that we should allow them to keep, I don't know what to invest. Is it pension funds? I thought that one is automatic. You can do it. I don't think you can be restricted from doing that. But my understanding, they are not there. So all our investors, except maybe must, because they have an endowment fund. Now the question that we're asking, why our public investors are not performing, and yet you go to CU where people are paying a lot of money. I checked with their, I just wanted to find out, I was looking at their balance sheet. They're much better off. Go to DMI, people are going there. And they have no problems that we have in our public institution. The question is, what should we do? And I would also want to find out from you. I checked with the university office. Most of the people that go to university, they come from private schools. I'm told even 60 to 70, I'm sure you can confirm that. 60 to 70%, even if you listen to the results of MCE, most of them come from private sector or from private schools. Where they're coming from, Like I think Karibu, for example, they were paying how much? Even is it millions actually per term, not per year. You have keys that are St. Andrews. You have keys that are Kamu's Academy. The same student who was able to afford the primary, these private schools, he goes to the public university. He only pays 300 and, or maybe a maximum of 500,000 per year. In other words, we are subsidizing those that can afford, because they have been affording at least from their primary and secondary school, because they were at primary. So I wanted to find out from the university, is there a possibility that, or isolating those that can afford, that they have to pay the price? They should be able to pay more. And also be able to isolate those that cannot afford, and those that we can provide scholarships or resources. So what do we need to do? My last question was to do with the health. I think Mehin also touched on that one. Most of us that are here, we are either on Mazin, I think most of Mazin. Some of us, we can afford to go to Maiwatu, we can go to Seventh-day Adventist. Now, the situation where we have to go, some of us that are here, we still go to the public hospitals. When you go there, you are competing with the poor man from the village who cannot afford anything, is not on Mazin, and you pay the same price. Actually, you don't pay, they are free. What is that we can do to isolate those that can afford, so that when they go to public hospital, they have to pay a commercial rate because they are able to. Because even some of them can even afford, they can even fly out of the country when they are sick. They can go there. But when they go to Kamusendo Hospital, they go to Queens, they will go and compete. In fact, I was checking, because there was a mention here that we need to have equipment. I went to Queens Hospital, checked the issue of the you got the MRI, and also they have equipment, the dialysis machine. If you check the list of the people that are there, mostly what I call them, well-to-do people. And they are the first one to be saved than somebody coming from the village, and they don't pay, or they pay very little. And the same people, when they go to Maiwatu, or when they fly out, they will pay a lot. The question I'm asking is that thing that we can do to isolate those that can afford. You and me, should we go to Queens Hospital? Do we have to go for free? Is there a possibility of separating that when you go there, if they know that you are in Mazin, you are at Reserve Bank, you are at MRA, you are in the bank, you should have a specific channel where you should go, be saved at a commercial rate. But those poor people should go also another channel where they should be. Is there a possibility? I raise my question. I raise my case. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister has raised the questions to provoke our minds, so that when we are commenting, responding, we should reflect on them as well, and maybe even assist us to come up with some solutions to the questions that he was raising. Going forward, I know we only have 30 minutes to go all the way up to the end of our discussions this morning. I will really limit the questions maybe to about 10 people. And what I will say is that for some of you who've got even presentations, please submit them to the office. And even questions that you may not ask here in this platform, please do send them to our office so that we can reflect on them and use them as we are finalizing the national budget. So if I may be allowed at this particular stage to allow the first 3 people to ask questions. I know there's a gentleman there.
Thank you.
And then there's Mr. Matemba there. And the gentleman here, in that particular order.
Thank you very much.
There could be questions, there could be just questions, there could be solutions to the questions that are being raised during the presentations, even the questions that the Honourable Minister did ask. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Reverend Frank Harawa. I am the Secretary General of the Minority Shareholders Association of Listed Companies. These are Malawians that have got shares on the Malawi Stock Exchange. First of all, let me give a solution. The Malawi Stock Exchange was set in 1996 for the reasons of, one, companies to raise capital, secondly, for Malawians to participate in the wealth of their country. Chodabwitsa ndichakuti ndichifukwa chani tikupitirizabe mabwereka ndrama pamene tikhoza kupeza ndrama zochipa pa msika wa Malawi Stock Exchange. Ndikulankhula pano dziko la Malawi ndi makampani 16 okha listed, pamene boma lili ndi makampani more than 70 amene safuna upanga list pa msika wa Malawi Stock Exchange. Otakuzipanga raise capital yokwana ndikupanga magetsi dziko muno osabwereka ndrama iliyonse iyayi. So, boma linalibwerere kusika Malawi Stock Exchange, likapange raise capital, lipange makampani ena ngati amagetsi amakhale makampani awo. Njira hii adzapanga, for example, kubweretsa Eskom kuipanga list pa Malawi Stock Exchange, umodzi paki akuzipanga list pa Malawi Stock Exchange, mene lili Sunbelt, boma lili 71% shareholding in Sunbelt. So, nsika undu wa boma la Malawi, chifukwa chinsapita pa nsikapanga raise capital, and amasankha kwa pamene ndrama kumaiko akunja, pamene the capital within Malawi. The second part of it, sir, is pa stock exchange pompo, boma la Malawi likhoza kupanga foreign denominated stock exchange. Pakhale body ina yogulira ma shares in dollar terms. So that maiko ena onse dziko la pansi ana amene ali kunja ku America, they can buy shares Malawi Stock Exchange in dollars. Therefore Malawi may have a lot of dollars. Timnoda but chifukwa timavutika chonchi pamene mansala tinapanga kati 1996. Lero DCTI uku ansala ilipo kale Malawi Stock Exchange. Ngakhale panopo be stock exchange yo taipanikiza ndi 30% capital gains tax. Izozo ndiye tinalemba kale kalata, I think tinaisiya kwa nduna tudikirira ansala ya kalata yathu. Chifukwa 30% yo ku Zambia ndi 0, Tanzania ndi 0, Zimbabwe ndi 1%. Ku Malawi 30% is just too much. Situkopa ujeni tax yo yayi. Compared with other countries around us is too high. Kumajira yopangira ndrama ndimene.
All right. And again, I think let us limit our questions to about a minute or two or so that we are within time. Mr. Matemba.
All right. Thank you so much, ST and the Honorable Minister. Just to answer.
Is that Mr. Matemba?
Yeah.
Please, can we have the 3 questions first?
Thank you
before
so
you
much.
come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ST. Let me thank you and the Honorable Minister and your team at Ministry of Finance for inviting us as civil society into this conversation. My first question, ST, is that I haven't heard much in terms of the framework. How is it aligned to the government manifesto As you are aware that the National Planning Commission and the Register of Political Parties mandates political parties in government to align their manifestos to this. So I don't know if indeed this framework, because I haven't heard much about that. That's a question. The second one is on solution. How are we doing on diaspora remittances in terms of improving our foreign exchange? We have so many Malawians outside who are willing to send their money in country. Most of them send their money informal. I don't know what measures are going to be taken in the next budget framework. The last one is on expenditure. My contribution on the expenditure, how to manage expenditure, as Honourable Minister has mentioned, is that our planning sometimes is challenging. I don't know how we're going to improve in terms of planning, budget planning at council level and all levels, so that we can minimize losses. I don't know what measures will be done, looking that we have low grants coming from donor countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, this gentleman over here.
Yeah, ST, a few years ago, we did, my name is Arthur Kapolo. I'm the head of regulatory affairs at the Airtel. So we did a research and analysis a few years ago on the 10% excise tax on the airtime and data. And we did a recommendation to the Minister of Finance then to say, after the calculations, we discovered that if you remove tax, VAT, excise tax on the airtime and data, and the leverage on the VAT on the usage of airtime services, you increase revenue by more than 20%. And after that discussion, nothing else moved. That's issue number one. Issue number two, we did also a calculation to say if the customs duty and the import taxes are reduced on the telecom equipment and the devices, and then leverage on the VAT on the usage done by the customers in Malawi, you also increase revenue of the government by 20%. And after that discussion, nothing else again moved. And further to that, we did also an analysis to say in Malawi, the usage on the OTT, over the top applications, like the WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, Malawi never gets any taxes from this usage. Is it possible to leverage on MACLA to ensure that these companies that operate on Facebook, Twitter, and other OTT services, they also pay to government in form of taxes? I think for now, let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions. You had a solution, you had an answer to the question on Malawi Stock Exchange?
Yes, what I wanted was to make submission on the answers to say what would be the solutions.
Can you come again?
Yes, I wanted to make submission in respect to the same question to say how can we increase revenue or reduce expenditure, but not following the order.
We'll take you on the second round. I know there are 3 questions here being put on the table, and on the stock exchange, I don't know whether Governor or the Honourable Minister would like to tackle this one. Honourable Minister.
I think there are other questions. I want to answer maybe 1 or 2 questions. The rest I will leave it to the technical people to respond. I want to answer the question, the need to move our companies to the stock exchange. And the last one, the tax on shares. First, I wanted to give you a background. Almost all, as presented by ECAM, almost all SOEs are non-performing. Their balance sheet, I don't think even the stock exchange will look at it. And I don't think any investor, sorry to say this, I'm not creating a problem for myself. The only institutions that are performing are regulatory in nature. The one where we're getting money is the Reserve Bank in some years. We have MACRA, Malawi Gaming Board. We have, who is the other one? They are mostly regulatory in nature. The rest of them are not. I know one of the conditions for one to invest in the stock market is where you think you will get a better return. You can't go into a company that's our challenge. And then you have given an example of, or one of our government institutions that is making money is Sunbed. And I've seen proposals wanting to buy. The question I was asking myself, why should I sell a profitable company where I'm making money and then I keep it in the performing ones? Remember I think we discussed that. Why should we dispose of a company and then leave ourselves with the water boards, ESCOM, who need money from us? If indeed the small investors, the minority shares, if you really want to invest, we can't request you, we'll give you incentives, go for greenfield, go and build another hotel, another sunbed, who will assist you. I know people are eyeing sunbed because it's making money. We're also looking at that. Okay, we are also excited that they're making money. We'll keep sunbed, because that's where we're getting revenue. But I've said, if you really want to invest in hotels, I've seen Nico are building, I think Nico are building so many hotels. I think there's the one at the Clock Tower. Is that Nico? I think that Nico, I don't know. It must be Nico there. We have the same Nico is at LILONGWE Golf Club. LILONGWE Golf Club. I think they're also building there. So what I would encourage you, if you really want to invest in the hotel, let's go greenfield. But as for Sunbed, we'll keep it because it's profitable. That's the only issue that we are proud of as government, that we are making money. That's one of them. The other one is, of course, the Malawi Bureau of Standards. I think Malawi Bureau of Standards. We are making money regulatory. So that's my answer to the question that you have raised. On the establishment of FCDA, foreign currency stock exchange, maybe we need to have more debate on that. I've been in that market before. I've been a treasurer. Maybe we need to sit down and see how can that be done, given our scenario. There was a question why foreign exchange is found in the parallel market and not in the official. Obviously, the answer is we know it. Who would today go to bank, get at 1751 and not go to the parallel market? I know the question that is coming, or the answer is coming, devalue the kwacha. That's so? Is that the answer? It's not. Issue that we are looking at, for what pushes the exchange rate is one, speculation, and two, what pushes the exchange rate is, of course, lack of, maybe we don't have resources, foreign exchange reserves in there. But also the amount, those that are participating in the parallel market, in the what do you call this, black market, it means they have kwacha outside banks. Because I don't think you can take a check and pay foreign exchange at Pasiboli. It's possible. The people that are trading in the black are using kwacha. What we are thinking, as for many other issues that we can do, one of them is to mop that excess liquidity. To mop up that excess liquidity. Can you imagine today we'll go digital? Can you imagine you take out the checks? After all, we are taking out checks anyway. I hope you have seen the advert. if you all transact digitally, would you transfer money to a person at the, what do you call this, at the black market? Yes or no? Countries where they have managed, so to manage, they manage exchange rate is by looking at money supply. I'll give you an example that happened. They also had a similar situation. Too much liquidity circulating in the market. In order to remove that excess liquidity, what they did was announce that from a particular day, they are going to change the denomination. Can you imagine today we decide that we are pulling out the current 5,000, we are pulling the 2,000, and that if you have it, please bring it to the bank for us to exchange. You get it? That money went to the banks. And immediately, they killed the black market. I'm just giving examples. I'm not saying, I shall repeat, I know Firaz is asking me issue about the exchange rate. We are saying, yes, it's one of them, but it's not the only answer to the issue of devaluation, the issue of the lack of foreign exchange in the banks. One of them, of course, we need to make sure we export more, so, and then we import less. Actually, one of the issues that I'm sure we are going to look at in our budget, is it possible now in Malawi we should be importing water, bottled water? If you go to some shops, you find the apples, vegetables from other countries. We have an extent of even having, actually we are looking at I was looking at the Ascuda from MRA. Where are we spending most of the foreign exchange? You'll be surprised. Most of them can be produced locally. What is important is what we do to ensure that there's import substitution, so that people now move from importing to ensure that they are able to buy locally. I don't know whether I've answered the question. So there are so many, maybe in a nutshell, there are so many ways of addressing the exchange rate issue, addressing the demand side, and also the supply side of the equation. That's the answer. A devaluation, like in our case, I think that graph had shown, every time you devalue, the parallel market moves. Actually, it's like you are chasing a wind. We devalued at 24, 25, the government can confirm. We devalued, what happened to the parallel rate? It moved. Actually, the gap even widened. And then we had a 44%. What happened? So, do we do the same thing? We know the results, and we think this time it will give a different result. Those are the questions I wanted to answer.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. And I think there was also a question from Mr. Matemba on whether the manifesto has been incorporated in the budget. In his presentation, the Honourable Minister also mentioned about the National Economic Recovery Plan. This is a mirror to the manifesto for government. And in there, we have articulated various key pillars, which include macroeconomic stability, the debt restructuring, the revenue mobilization, social protection, rule of law and governance, investment in key economic activities, and so forth. So it's heavily aligned, to the manifesto. And on Airtel excise tax, I think this is something that is of interest.
Yeah, I didn't answer that question on tax on shares. I think I didn't answer that question. Maybe I will answer that question by asking another question. I have 1 million. There are two people. one decides to pay, to deposit this money in a fixed deposit or buy treasury bill. There's a withholding tax 20%. But another one has the same 1 million, he decides to invest in shares. Should he not pay tax? It's all investment. It's all investment. I know the issue is maybe implementation, challenge how it has been done. But what we are saying, anybody that is investing, whether you are invested in treasury bills, in deposits, you have to pay. Similarly, even the one who was invested who has chosen to invest in shares and not deposits, they cannot be treated differently. They are all investment, they have to be to pay a rate. But the issue is at what rate? What we mentioned about the 30%. I think that's something that we need to look at. But the issue is income tax, or not income tax, profit made from investment, they need to be taxed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think quickly, I understand Mehin would like to respond to what the minister said. I think in a minute or so, so that we can take up 2 or 3 other questions.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. You asked a question to the Malawi Health Equity Network. Of course, when I was making a presentation, I forgot to introduce myself. I am George Jobe.
Oh, yeah, we know you. We know you very well.
Thank you very much, Honorable. The question on people, you gave an example of MAZIM, and we can talk about other medical schemes. In our presentation, we said there should be a system in the public health facilities. For example, it could take advantage of the digital health so that the database of medical schemes must be linked to that database. When I go to a facility in Misuku, the facility must identify me. They should know that I am on Momentum Health, I am on MAZIM, then the system should deduct from the company. The company should pay. So you are very right that people, when they go to public facility, they don't pay. I gave an example of the same MAZIM. A medical doctor is on MAZIM, working at a health facility, is unwell. They just get a treatment. The medical scheme doesn't pay, and that is what, as Malawi Health Equity Network, we call double dipping. So if the government can invest in that system, we believe it can work. One of the reforms which are still underway, being discussed, is the national health insurance, whereby even the non-poor informal sector should be identified and should be contributing so that their insurance can pay when they access health facilities. Thank you very much, Honorable.
Thank you very much. Can we now have a next round of questions? There's a gentleman at the back, and then a gentleman in front of him, and the lady. Let's have a lady now. In that order, please, you have the floor. Yes.
The Honorable Minister, I'm Andrew Jumula, and I've got an interest in one issue regarding patient.
Can you come again, the name?
Andrew Jumula.
From which institution?
I'm a finance officer, retired.
Okay.
Sure. I've got an interest in one thing that you mentioned in your speech regarding future improvements, that is statutory expenditure obligation, clearing of arrears. That was one of the issues that you raised. And now I've got an interest in Pension Act 2023. There are two issues there: payment of benefits for retirees and protection of benefits. Now, Mr. Minister, one of the issues that due zimene zimakonda kukhudza kwambiri anthu amene analandira pension ndi minimum monthly pension payments. Minimum monthly payments imene amalandira is too low. And we can imagine somebody working for over 30 years, and at the end of his employment, he's getting something like 15,000 kwacha or 20,000 kwacha per month as a payment package remuneration. I, as somebody who has worked for over 35 years in the finance section, I've experienced that, paying somebody over almost 25,000, 30,000, which is very low. Now, I'd like to ask or to request the minister if you can analyze, if you can align or harmonize the minimum wage and the minimum monthly payment that is paid to retirees, those people who have retired. Abana, and family amalandira pension they have been working religiously for over 30 years and they have been productive. Now their welfare, when they are retired, you can't imagine somebody when amalandira 2 million kwacha per month. Now it's less than 100,000, which is below minimum wage. It doesn't make sense. And now because of that, I imagine I think healthy, mental health and the like, or social welfare. And amavutika kuti mwina aendese moyo wao. Chifukwa kuti amandira zochepa, they can't much as I do understand that munthu akamalandira telekeze pension amalandira annual, amalandira lump sum. Koma imene ndiye kuti imathandiza mwina munthu kukonza kuti nyumba take, mabusiness yake. After that, zimene amakhala nazo nzochepa. So I'd like to urge the minister, if you can, in your policy, make a deliberate policy to make sure that their monthly payment should not be less than the minimum wage, which everybody is supposed to receive. That's one thing. And another thing, for anthu amene analandira pension, china chimene makufuna kuti a minister muganizire, the remittance of funds. Normally, anthu amene analandira pension, telekeza amene anafika minimum wage of 50. You do consider them good and pension, malinga ndi regulation yake kuchoka section 88 to section 102 of Pension Act 2023. Now, munthu wakutsana gwira ntchito poyamba zimatenga 6 months kuti alandire telekeze 40%, but now it's 50%. But now, zikumata kutenga nthawi itali. Munana kuti azilandira muna within 3 months. Come look here, Mr. Minister. Zikumatenga over 1 year instead of 3 months. So can you make deliberate policy as well to audit whoever the pension administrators, wherever they are, that they must, as he has said, within 3 months they can receive their 50% and then they well off, they can do whatever with their lump sum instead of waiting for another 1 year.
Yeah. I think you've been heard. It's very, very clear. Gentlemen.
Honorable Minister, my name is Trevor Kandoje.
Is it me or?
No, it's him.
It's supposed to be me, is it?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm Adams Banda. I represent a group of pensioners. I think I'll be building on what he has already raised, who retired before 2004, whose take home is far, far too low, far lower than their colleagues that retired after 2004. There was an attempt to address the disparity between those two groups. First, in 2017, when this group was given 200%, with a promise that there will be subsequent increments to cover the gap so that the two groups are at par. Unfortunately, that is a promise unfulfilled. Last financial year, a tentative step was made towards addressing the issue. The question is, do we want us to answer to God's call before we are assisted in this field?
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you. We heard you. We've heard you. And the last question from the lady.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. My name is Barbara Banda. I'm coming from the National Association of Business Women, representing thousands of business women who want to help this country in earning foreign currency by import substitution. We want to export goods, and for those goods to be acceptable in the markets we have obtained, we need certification. Certification has become a barrier for us because it's not only expensive, but it is very difficult for us to access MBS services. Our request, Honorable Minister, is that your budget should look at financing MBS so that it offers a service that allows the thousands of SMEs in this country to be able to put their products on the market. You alluded to the fact that you are seeing imported goods in the market. It's because those goods are certified, our goods are not certified, and they cannot be on the market. Secondly, Honorable Minister, I am concerned when I hear that from the presentation from Megan, that we are not implementing projects in an efficient way. A certain country, when they assumed the government, they introduced a department called DOGE, and they were able to unearth a lot of inefficiencies in government systems, and also to be able to see a lot of corruption that was happening, which has even led to us getting less of